Hi there. We're just kind of waiting for people to log on here, and then we'll get started right away. My name's Dwayne Job. I'm the owner of System Fencing Stalls or System Equine, and we do fencing stalls and equipment in the horse and livestock market. We've been in business since 1987, so it's our 35th anniversary this year. And we're very happy to do these seminars every once in a while to give you the farm owner more ideas on how to set your farm up properly and how to be more efficient. We all know that labor is very hard to get nowadays, and the closer the paddock layouts are, the easier it is to turn horses out from paddock to paddock. The less we're cleaning mud off the horse's feet, the less the horses are sinking into the mud is going to be way better for everyone. So I started the business when I was 17 and have and still fully involved in the business. I go out to farms probably anywhere from 5 to 10 times a week and do paddock layouts. And I've been doing that since we started. What I do when I go out is I help people visualize what they can do on the property. As we know, if you talk to 10 different horse owners, you'll get 11 different answers. So you can talk to neighbors and other horse people, but just realize that you're going to get a lot of different varying ideas. And all my job is when I talk to someone on the phone, go through it on Google Earth or our fence estimator plan, is I just give people ideas. So at the end of the day, you're going to have to work with your farm. You're going to have to turn your horses out. You're going to have to be comfortable with the layout that is done. We I don't even know. We have hundreds of thousands of feet of fence installed across all of Ontario. I've done work out in BC. I've done work in Alberta. We've done some stalls down in Florida where we've actually done the installations. So I've seen lots of horse farms, lots of different layouts, and certainly someone building paddocks out in Alberta is different than someone building paddocks in Ontario and down in the States. So I'll give you lots of ideas, and then you take and use what you can. We're here to talk about mud in a certain degree in Rockwood, Ontario. We had a lot of rain today. So you horse owners are probably wondering what to do with the horses. They've been inside all day. You can't turn them out in the paddocks unless you have an all-weather paddock. And I can just feel your frustration. You move right from ice in your paddock areas, and you're right into mud. And the transition between the two of them are pretty quick. The primary thing is when you're doing paddock layout is to have a sacrifice area. Have an area that is an all-weather paddock, even if it's small. It can be 20 to 20 by 50. Something small that you can get the horses out of the barn, you can muck the stalls out, you can bring them back in, but they're not going to be 2 feet of mud when you're trying to turn them out. It's very unsafe for the horses to be in that much mud. So do out in Alberta, they do a lot of 12 by 20 foot paddocks, and they come right off the barn. And it's really just to get the horses out. In Ontario, we don't think a horse can be in that big a paddock, but they can. It's just something that is safe for them to go out into it. I'll start with some of the questions that we've got from our viewers. And then if you have any other questions as we're going, certainly I've got Savannah here and she can ask some more of the questions of me. So first question is, what is your ideal paddock layout? Well, my ideal paddock layout is like a sacrifice area. I'll just bring up on our screen here. We haven't tested this fully, so I want to make sure that it does work. Actually, I lost the key. We're just going to see if we can share that. We've got another screen set up here, and if not, I'll do it on the board. Why don't I just do it on the board? I've got a couple markers here, and I've got a whiteboard here. So ideally, when you're setting up a field, if you take your barn is here, you want to try, say this is your stables out in front of your barn, and this is your arena. Stables, arena, side doors of your stables. You want to have as many paddocks as close to this area as you can that are all weather paddocks, so you're not walking so far. If you put paddocks up here and you want to walk down, if you want to walk there the whole time, you're not going to have a lot of staff after it because you're going to be walking 2 or 3 horses at a time and trying to get them back to a back paddock. So you want to have as many paddocks in this area here. So taking this layout, say we have a couple individual turnouts here. Then you can add some bigger fields in behind here. That way you can put a gate here and you can have turnout. You can put your water up in these paddocks, and you can even split these paddocks down, trying to keep away from any sharp corners in here. So this way you feed and water up in this paddock. When it's a day like today out, you keep the horses in this small paddock. When it's nice out, you open this gate and they have access to this paddock, but they also can come up and get water. You're putting one water source in, you're not putting 2 water sources in. So, and you can do this a bunch of different ways. You can do double lines between it. When we first started 35 years ago and fencing was cheap and people had lots of money, we would put alleyways between all the paddocks, and that Kentucky farm kind of look. Nowadays, we do a lot of single lines, and there's horses on both sides of the paddock. It's just the reality that fencing is more expensive, and people are trying to make better use of their land. Whenever you put alleyways down here, you got to cut the grass in them, or you got to turn the donkey out down the alleyway. Either way, there is some maintenance that you want to try to stay away from if you can. So layout, another layout like this. Like this, or if all the horses get along and you want to do some rotational grazing, so again, water source here, open up into the paddocks. This way you're only dealing with mud in this area. So that's your all weather field in there in this area. So you have lots of stone dust. Let's talk about mud in that area for a second. The way you get mud is organic material. So dirt has organic material in it, creates mud. Subbase, which is the material below your dirt or your topsoil, does not have any organic material in it, natural subbase material. So ultimately, you want to scrape off. Some places you have 2 inches of topsoil, some places you have 4 inches of topsoil, some places you have 2 to 3 feet of topsoil. So you do have to watch that. If you dig 2 to 3 feet out of here, you got to bring a bunch of fill in that doesn't have any organic material in it, topsoil, to pack down in there. And then the best way to do it is to put some stone dust on top. Clay clay is a sub-base material, but it also, when it's wet, it'll suck the horses right down in. So If you're going to put stone dust in here, you want to make sure it's well drained. So you want to have a slope one direction or another. You want to have the gate in a high spot, and the minimum amount of stone dust that you want to put in is 4 to 6 inches. Anything less than that, and it's just going to mix with the material that's underneath. So it's going to mix with your sub base. A horse is going to come down and go through that stone dust because it's not thick enough, and it's going to kind of mix in with that sub base material. So you want 4 to 6 inches of stone dust. Uh, and this would be a 3 paddock layout. So you'd turn your horses out for 3 days on this one. They'd eat the grass down, and then you'd close that gate, open this gate, turn horses out for 3 to 5 days on this one. Again, it depends on if you do any work on your pasture, if you do any maintenance on your pasture. If you fertilize your pasture, then the grass is going to grow more. So you can it'll take longer to kind of go through the whole cycle before they eat it down. So that's just a couple different types of paddock layouts that I always like to try to find a smaller area as a sacrifice paddock and then have it open up, whether it's square lines or diagonal lines. Some people like have square lines on their property. Other people like to use and get similar size fields. The best tool for laying that out to get field sizes is Ontario Ag Maps, and it's all of Ontario. So I'm sure other ag societies, Alberta may have one, BC may have one, down in the US may have one, and it will actually do area and have you figure out how much area that each is, and it's very easy to use. It's a free tool. It's used on Google, or I haven't tried to use it on any other formats, but it's used on Google, and it gives you measurements of your fence line as well as the area. We do have a tool on our website uh, called the Fence Estimator. It won't give you areas, but it will give you measurements. So you can use that too, and visit our website at systemequine.com. So that's my ideal layout. And that kind of leads into the second question. How many sacrifice paddocks should you have? It really depends on the number of horses that you're dealing with. If you've got a herd of 20 horses or 100 horses, you're going to need more sacrifice paddocks. And again, it depends on the size. And you can use temporary fencing for that too. So in this situation, if you just had a big field like this, what you would want to do in the spring is maybe section off a corner of the field with temporary fencing. Make sure your water source is here, your feed source. Section it off. They can, eh, you'll figure out soon enough who the boss horses are and who you might have to make a second second temporary area for, just to keep the horses safe. But if you keep them safe and keep them in here on days like today until you can walk through that field and they're not punching through. So as soon as they punch through, again, just like stone dust with their feet, once they go through that grass and get into the root structure, it takes a lot longer for that grass to grow back up. So if you get the grass so it's all knit together, then it's going to be a lot better. And the horses have a harder time getting through that knit grass like that or like that than they do when the grass is like that, because they just punch right through it, especially in soil that's not the greatest. When you're first laying out your paddocks, try to pick the high spots for your gates and try to get some slope on it. A lot of us are given the fields that we're given, and we want to try to make the best use of it. But temporary fencing will make the best use of it, especially in the spring and fall or a really rain day. And it doesn't take long to put up, but it does save your fields. You can feed hay right now. They're not going to get any more nutrients going out in the field than if you're feeding hay in a smaller area. Um, how big should sacrifice paddock be? Again, a horse will turn out in an area 12 by 20. If you have 2 horses out, you go 20 by 20. If you have 5 horses out, you go 50 by 50. You're going to know your horses. You're going to know which ones are going to kick another one at any period of time. So you have to use your best judgment on that. And that's sometimes where temporary fencing comes in, that you can put some step-in posts in and cordon off an area. Would you use the same fencing for your sacrifice paddocks as you would for your pastures? Yes and no. We talked about some temporary fencing. So this time of year, again, a bigger farm that you don't have a lot of resources and you just want to keep horses in an area, then some temporary fence or temporary panels. We sell a lot of panels for temporary fencing or a round pen. If you're going to turn horses out in a round pen, I'd use a heavier duty round pen. Some of our lighter duty round pens will not stand up to horses beating on them. And um, so if you're using a sacrifice paddock, I would run electric on it. If you're over 20 by 20, you can use board, you can use our flex fence, you can use square deal, something that's going to stand up to the abuse. And it can be the same as the rest of your fencing, or it can be different or temporary. Um, Mud. How do we get rid of mud? The best way is to do proper drainage and put a proper material up on top and let the grass grow so that it's knit together. Some other ways, if you're having problems, and you can't, say you're right through a water course and you have you dig down and you find the sub-base material, which is different color than the topsoil. Typically, it's a kind of a lighter brown, or it's sand underneath. Then and you're 2 feet down and you're just kind of hitting it, then you're not going to spend the cost to remove all that topsoil and put stone gravel in and stone dust on top. So we have the option of a couple different types of grid systems. So we have our what are these are paddock slabs. These are mud control grids. So they can actually go right on topsoil. So you can see how wide they are, and they're heavy duty. You can't bend them. They're very rigid. They and you can lay them right on the soil. They lock together. It's actually too heavy. I have two here, but they're too heavy to put together. But they slide into one another, so they will lock and stay together. You can drive on them. A horse can walk on them. If it's really muddy, they will actually push down through the surface, and then when you get a chance at some point in time in the future, you basically can dig them out of the mud and put them back up on the top, pressure wash them, put them back up on the top. So they will sit right on the mud, and you can drive a tractor on them, you can drive a truck on them, you can drive backhoe, gators, whatever you want on that. So that one there is the heavy duty one, and then we have a lighter duty one that's very similar honeycomb design. It's about as thick. The it locks together where it's actually hard to get apart, so they will stay together a lot better. You should use with this one, you should use a proper base. So you should strip your topsoil off, build it up with gravel, put stone dust on it, and put this on top. You can fill this with dirt and have grass grow up through it too. It will, because there's enough area in the middle here, it will allow grass to grow up through it. It is still fairly rigid. There are a bunch of different types in the marketplace. This one's actually bigger than a lot of the different ones on the marketplace, so you're dealing with less grids to put it together, and it's actually a little bit more rigid. There's more plastic in it. They're all made out of recycled plastic, so it is helping the environment. They could be dug out if you did put them on mud, but they won't because of the surface area and the porous of it. It will sink through the mud quicker. So you probably don't want to use it as much, but it does work very well too. Some people add wood chips to help. Does wood chips help minimize mud? There's a couple different types of wood chips. There's shavings on the market. There's hog fuel, which is a out in BC and a little bit in Alberta. And what you're doing when you're using that material is if you already have a mud problem, you're putting more organic material on the surface. So the organic material breaks down, wood chips break down. It's going to create more mud in the long term. It might, when you put manure out on your, when it's all ice and that, I would try to pick it all back up in the spring because it will create more mud in the long term. So if you build up and you put that much manure or wood chips on it, then that just breaks apart and starts to compost, and then it creates another layer of organic material, which is mud. And you're going to have a harder time long term when that happens. So if you can stay away from it, I know it gets icy, and the best way to get rid of the ice is to keep on it with the tractor before you walk on it or before you move it. But we do get ice storms in Ontario and a lot of Canada and the northern US, and it will create ice. If you do need to use kind of a bit of an ice melter on it, the mag chloride is a bit less corrosive than regular salt and will help to keep some of the pathways down. It does become a problem, and having a good snow blower to create paths out to your paddock is better. And that's the other reason why when you're making paddocks, you want to have them as close to the barn as possible, because in the winter you want as least amount of maintenance as you can. I think that answers the questions on the wood chips. Another question. What are some of the small changes that can easily or inexpensively implement to help reduce mud? Get rid of as much organic material. So the best way is to pick your paddocks. Get rid of the horse manure out of the paddocks every day, or once a week. It just creates organic material, which creates mud. It doesn't help your pastures grow anymore. You can run a harrow over it to break it up. It will help a bit because then it's breaking up in wider pieces versus clumps. The build your paddocks in a higher area. Build your gates in areas that are higher up, so the horses have to come up to a gate instead of putting a gate at the bottom of a hill in an area with a stream through it. It's going to create a lot of extra mud there. And create smaller sacrifice paddocks. So the smaller the paddock, the less mud you have to deal with until like today, if we get sun and wind for the next 2 days, even one day, a lot of fields you'll be able to go back out on. So be patient on your fields. If you can keep them inside, the horses inside, like an ice day for a couple days, then I would do it. It makes a huge difference on your paddocks. If you're having problems still with the mud and you're in a bit higher area, you can scrape some of that organic material off. Make the difference between your sub base and your topsoil less so that the horses aren't sinking as far. If you scrape that much mud off and you're only that much more to your sub base, then they're only punching through that much instead of that much. And it does make a difference. Um, What are some good rules to follow to help maintain the integrity of the soil in established pastures? Great questions too. Great. Thanks for all the questions that came in, and some of the questions that are coming in on our chat. The the um, the best way to keep your soil is, and we've talked about it, is pick your paddocks. It does make a big difference. Harrowing helps as long as you're using something that's not very aggressive. So if you're using a harrow and you've got the spikes turned down in a grass paddock, it's going to rip the root structure of the grass as it goes across it. So you want to have a bit less ripping it. Turn your harrow upside down. It's usually less aggressive. Use some chain link. But honestly, the best way is to get both from a biosecurity standpoint and from a mud management standpoint, get the manure out of your paddocks and into your manure bin. The Don't overuse your paddocks. Hey, that's a loaded question. I've been out to farms that have 20 acres and 40 horses on it. and it's how can I not overuse my paddocks? You you can try to grade, you can try to do the paddocks will stand up if you give the horses access to it when it's dry enough that they're not punching into the root structure. They'll hold up, but they do need a 3 to 5 days to rest if you're not eating it down right to the root. So if the horses are eating it down to the right to the ground, and it's gonna take a lot longer to come back than if you've got the horses eating it down to that much. The other thing is cut your paddocks. So the even if you're not using them, don't let the grass get really long. Cut the paddocks so that the grass grows up. 4 to 6 inches is kind of ideal. What that does is it traps more water in the grass when it grows, so that it gets more nutrients into the root structure, and it'll fill in the grass a lot heavier. So again, we talked about knitting the grass together, and when you can knit that grass together tighter, which is when you cut it longer, probably 4 to 6 inches, then it just the grass grows a lot better, and the horses are a lot less likely, even if they're walking on it, they're folding the grass over, so it's creating a knit to it instead of if it's really thin, they're just going to punch through it. Um, Use some temporary fencing to cordon off some areas so that you're not overgrazing. Set your water at the front of the paddock so that just in one area, and even if you need to use the mud grids just around the water, that just helps to keep some of the mud down around that. Savannah, we got any other questions? All right. Yeah, I just wanted to keep it half an hour and keep these nice and short and sweet. And certainly, if you have any questions on anything we've talked about or anything else, we're available at sales@systemequine.com. Uh, our phone lines were actually down for 4 or 5 days at the start of this week, but our 1-800 number is 1-800-461-3362. And my name's Dwayne. We have 6 salespeople that are on the phone all the time. And if you don't get some of the answers you want, certainly ask for me. I'm willing to take calls all the time. So I appreciate your time tonight. And we had a good turnout. And bye for now. We'll see you next time.